Last time we left the class at sequence of the nerve block, like how it starts. The first is the vasomotor block, then the cold temperature fibers. You remember that? And then finally, last, the proprioception is lost. So that was the direct effect of spinal anesthesia. Okay. Direct effect was what? On the nerve roots, right? Now there are some indirect effects of spinal anesthesia which occur, right? Which are undesirable, which we don't really want, but they still happen. So those indirect effects are also occurring because of paralysis of the nerves. Okay. But it is happening because of paralysis of the sympathetic, primarily because of the paralysis of the sympathetic nerve fibers. Okay. So if you remember, sympathetic outflow of the spinal cord is from thoracolumbar. Parasympathetic is craniosacral. Just remember that, then we'll understand that in detail ahead. So the indirect effects, first we'll understand what is the effect on the vascular system. All right. So vascular, what you will expect that there is going to be sympathetic fibers are blocked, right? So therefore, what will happen? The vasoconstricting properties of the blood vessels will be lost, right? So because of that, what's going to happen? You will find there'll be decrease in the diastolic BP, there'll be decrease in the systolic BP, and there's going to be decrease in the mean arterial BP. Because the vasoconstricting property is lost, decrease in the vasomotor tone of the blood vessels. All right. Now, this hypotension which is occurring is why vasomotor tone of all the blood vessels is reduced. Okay, so arteriolar vasodilation is occurring, venodilation is occurring, and capillary bed dilation is also occurring. So, this is because of what? There's going to be arteriolar, okay, it's going to be venodilation, and even the capillary bed. All of them are going to have vasodilation. Okay. So that is why the BP is falling, hypotension is occurring. Now, what else is occurring? Because arteriolar vasodilation is occurring, that means what? That there's a decrease in the peripheral vascular resistance. This means what? Decrease in the peripheral vascular resistance, right? Then what else happens? That the blood vessels which are supplying to the anesthetized limb, for example, if we have given spinal and the lower limbs are anesthetized completely, upper limbs are not anesthetized. So what's going to happen? There's going to be increase in the blood flow because of this vasodilation. There's going to be increase in the blood flow to the anesthetized limbs, that is the lower limbs. Whereas there's going to be compensatory vasoconstriction, which is going to occur in the upper limbs because this portion is not blocked by spinal anesthesia, right? So there will be compensatory vasoconstriction occurring over here, right? Whereas there'll be vasodilation in the lower limbs. Okay. So what you're going to see on the lower limbs, there's going to be increase in the blood flow to the lower limbs, right? What is the benefit of this? There's going to be increase in the blood flow, and there's also going to be reduced risk for deep vein thrombosis. So there are some advantages of spinal anesthesia over GA. One of the advantages that deep vein thrombosis, the incidence of deep vein thrombosis after the surgery in a patient who's undergone spinal anesthesia is much less than the incidence of DVT in a patient who's undergone GA. All right. Then what else we need to know? That I told you there will be increase in the blood flow to the anesthetized extremities, right? So if the majority of the blood volume is going there, so obviously there will be depletion in the blood volume somewhere, right? Because majority of blood flow is going to the anesthetized area. So that means what? The splanchnic circulation, the circulation to the internal organs. So I mean the splanchnic circulation, the coronary circulation, the pulmonary blood supply, the hepatic supply, all right, the visceral bed, their blood flow will be reduced. Okay, the rate of blood flow over there will be lesser. So these are some of the things that we note in vascular. Okay. Then next, what we should know is in the cardiac. What are the cardiac effects that occur? These are the indirect effects, right, of spinal. So what we know, what are the cardio accelerator fibers, the fibers which are going to be providing the sympathetic supply to the heart? They are coming out from T1 to T4. So if our spinal block comes to T4 and above, that means what? Our cardio accelerator fibers are getting paralyzed. Okay. So because of which, what's going to happen? There will be bradycardia in this patient. Okay. Bradycardia is occurring because of one, because cardio accelerator fibers have been paralyzed. First thing. Second, sympathetic fibers are paralyzed. What about the parasympathetic supply of the heart? So parasympathetic supply of the heart is what? Vagus, the vagus nerve. That is not blocked, right? Because that is a cranial nerve, vagus, right? 10th nerve. So that is not blocked. So that, what is the role of vagus? It's going to cause Vagus tone is going to be the unmasked. Now it's because parasympathetic has been suppressed. Parasympathetic is taking it's overriding the sympathetic. So overall, there's going to be bradycardia. So there are going to be two methods of bradycardia. One is that because of the vagus nerve. Second is because the cardio accelerator fibers, the sympathetic fibers to the heart, have been paralyzed by spinal. Okay. Now, what will happen because of this? Because of this sympathetic parasympathetic imbalance which has occurred because of spinal. So we already know that this is going to cause decrease in the PP, and there is venodilation. Venodilation means what? There's going to be decrease in the venous return, right? So because of venodilation, we are having decrease in the venous return to the heart, which means what? There's going to be decrease in the right atrium filling of the heart, right? Venous blood return is less, which means there's decrease in the cardiac output, right? And ultimately, what has happened? There's decrease in the left ventricular work of the heart. This is what is the effect on the heart that is occurring under spinal anesthesia in any patient. So, don't you think this is a good thing for a patient who is having a known case of maybe a cardiac condition? That the patient, the work done by the heart is reduced, right? So it is cardio, it's in a way you can say it is cardioprotective. So if you have a cardiac patient and you want to prefer GA or you want to prefer spinal or epidural, so this is applicable even for epidural, whatever we are discussing. So you will think, right, when I'm giving GA, I will have an intubation response, extubation response, right? So I have to prevent that tachycardia which occurs, right? So all of those things will actually be, therefore, regional is much preferred in them if they don't have a fixed cardiac output state, right? So the patient doesn't have a fixed cardiac output, you are able to maintain the hemodynamics of the patient, then it's very good to continue with regional anesthesia. Okay. Now, I'll just quickly explain to you there are 3 cardiac reflexes. Okay, so you need to understand these cardiac reflexes if you want to understand the effect of spinal on the heart. Okay, so first is Bainbridge reflex, we'll understand. Then we'll understand the carotid sinus receptor, this carotid baroreceptor reflex, and then we'll understand the Bezold-Jarisch reflex. Okay, what is happening in this reflex? It is based on the right atrium pressure. Okay, so there are stretch receptors located in the right atrium. Okay, so there are stretch receptors in the right atrium, right? So these stretch receptors, so what happens when the filling is more? If the venous return is more, these stretch receptors will stretch more, right? Atrium will stretch more. So because of which, what will happen? There's going to be increase in the, it will sense increase in the RA pressure, right? So now what will happen after it has sensed it? Now, if any sense has occurred, that means a stimulus is generated and it is sent somewhere, right? A message has to go somewhere for us to get a return response. That's the way our body works, right? So what will happen? Right atrium has stretched. Okay, this RA stretch receptors have sensed the increase in the pressure, right atrium has stretched. Now what will happen? The messages will go, and the messages will go where? To the cardiovascular center in the medulla. Okay. Now cardiovascular center in the medulla will get a message what? That right atrium is stretching too much. We need to reduce that stretch. Okay, it's not good. So medulla will send efferents. Medulla will send the efferents back to the heart. And what will it cause? It will cause increase in the heart rate. So the efferents from the cardiovascular system to the medulla will cause increase in the heart rate. This increase in the heart rate would ultimately cause what? Increase in the cardiac output, because cardiac output is what? Stroke volume into heart rate. Already the stroke volume is more, right? Because the incoming filling is more of the heart, right? So already stroke volume is more. Now with the help of increase in the heart rate, we have increased the cardiac output. Now what will happen? Gradually the RA pressure will become normal, right? Gradually what will happen? As the heart rate increases, the emptying of the heart will increase and the RA pressure will normalize. So this is the Bainbridge reflex. Now we go to the, now remember this reflex, okay? This reflex is based on right atrium pressure and heart rate. Just keep this in mind. So carotid baroreceptor reflex, okay? Now we know that carotid is, in the carotid artery, we have baroreceptors, right? What is the role of this baroreceptor? Baroreceptor means what? Pressure. It's a pressure sensor. It's a pressure sensor. So it's going to sense the blood pressure. What is its role? To keep the blood pressure within the normal range, right? Not to allow too much fluctuation. If the BP is falling, it will send messages and help to increase the BP. If the BP is high, it will send a message and help the BP normalize. So that is a role. Now, how does this happen? How does this reflex work? Okay. So there are stretch receptors which help to maintain the arterial BP. Okay. So they are located where? It is located in the carotid sinus. So it has it, and the aortic arch. So these are the two places where these receptors, baroreceptors, are located. Now this changes in the BP. What happens? BP fell. Message went to where? Medulla, cardiovascular center in the medulla. Afferents went there. Message went. Efferents will go to the heart. Okay. And what will happen? There will be, it will either provide a sympathetic response or will give a parasympathetic response. So if it is sensed that the BP is low, so the low BP is there, that means what? You have to increase the sympathetic activity of the heart to increase the BP, right? So you will have sympathetic outflow. So it wants to increase the sympathetic outflow, right? So that will happen. If the BP is more, so what will it do? It will blunt the it will encourage the parasympathetic system. So basically, it is just modulating the sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. BP falls, parasympathetic activity overtakes, sympathetic activity will overtake. BP is high, parasympathetic activity will overtake. That is it. So this is maintaining the arterial BP with the help of the carotid baroreceptor. Okay, so we can go from, and these messages are coming from where? These messages are coming from the medulla, okay, cardiovascular center of medulla. Basically, there is a just understand parasympathetic and sympathetic balance will be there. So BP is less means what? Sympathetic outflow will increase and the parasympathetic outflow will decrease. BP is more, then the reverse, decrease in the sympathetic, increase in the parasympathetic outflow. That's it. That is the balance. Okay. Now we'll understand the Bezold-Jarisch reflex. So what is the Bezold-Jarisch reflex? This reflex will get activated when there's any noxious stimulus that is going to the heart. So it's seen whenever there is a myocardial ischemia, okay, or when there is this myocardial infarction. So these are noxious stimulus to the heart, right? So why is this reflex getting activated? Because it wants to protect the heart. It's cardioprotective in nature. All right. So it senses any noxious stimulus. So remember this, it's based on noxious stimulus. This is the first point. Okay. What is the second point? From where is this noxious stimulus getting sensed? So there are mechano and chemoreceptor where in the left ventricular walls of the heart. Okay. So in the left ventricular wall, there are these receptors. So obviously ischemia will happen. So there will be all this lactic acid and all imbalance, right? So all of this is sensed in the left ventricular wall. All right. So that message is generated. Now what will happen? As usual, a message is generated. It goes where? To the medulla. Medulla will send efferents to whom? To the heart. Okay. So how is this response going to occur? So there is going to be a triad. Okay. In this Bezold-Jarisch reflex, its aim is to protect the heart. So you will see bradycardia. All right. You will see fall in the BP. That means you will see fall in heart rate, you will see fall in BP, and you will see coronary vasodilation. So coronary dilation will be seen. So you can understand how this is cardioprotective by decreasing the BP, decreasing the heart rate, and improving the coronary blood flow. This is like a protective response. Okay, so now we have understood three different reflexes. Now we have to understand how our spinal anesthesia block and bradycardia occur and how these reflexes are involved in that. Okay. So when our block is, when you have a high block, okay, so there are two ways. When we have a block, okay, that is going from like T5 to L. Suppose the block is up to the level of T5, between T5 and below. So that means what? Those sympathetic fibers have been blocked. So what has happened because of this? Because of this, sympathetic, there's a sympathetic block of the fibers from T5 to L2. That means so many fibers have been blocked. Now what has happened? Because of this, there's going to be decreased venous return to the heart because of this, right? Now, because of this decreased venous return, what are we going to expect? Hypotension, correct? So, this hypotension now, which we had learned, who is responsible for maintaining the BP? The carotid baroreceptor. So, the message went to the carotid baroreceptor. Okay. What will carotid baroreceptor respond with the hypotension? It will respond by increasing in the heart rate. This is what that reflex did, right? Secondly, what is happening? There's another reflex which we had learned. Because of decrease in the venous return, this decrease in the venous return is causing decrease in the RA filling, because the filling of the heart is also reduced now. So what happened now? The right atrium filling is less. Therefore, this decrease in the RA pressure and stretch. There is less stretch. Now the stretch is less. What will happen? We are going to come to which reflex? Bainbridge reflex. Correct. So now this Bainbridge reflex, what is it going to do? If the stretch is less, it will cause decrease in the heart rate. It doesn't need to increase the heart rate, right? Correct. So now what will happen because of this? Heart rate has reduced. Heart rate has reduced here. Heart rate has increased here. Can you see there are two opposing effects which have occurred? Heart rate has increased from one method and heart rate has decreased, provided the sympathetic block is where between T5 to L2. Cardio accelerator fibers have not yet been paralyzed. It is just below that. Therefore, the heart rate will be almost balanced. You won't find too much tachycardia. You won't find bradycardia. You will have almost like a balanced heart rate response. Okay. Now, suppose the spinal block is T5 and above. Okay. T5 and above. So that means what has happened now? The cardio accelerator fibers have been paralyzed. So this has been blocked and therefore you're going to have decrease in the heart rate. Okay. Next, what has happened? T5 and above means what? T5 and below is also paralyzed, right? It's going above. So it might be like going all the way from, full thoracic and lumbar is blocked. Now what has happened? There's going to be decrease in the venous return. Therefore, decrease in the RA filling. Therefore, Bainbridge. There's going to be decrease in the heart rate. So because of this decrease in the heart rate here and here, you might land up with asystole. I mean cardiac arrest. So now what has happened? The sympathetic supply of the heart is gone. All right. Along with that, the sympathetic supply of all the blood vessels are gone. All the blood vessels below. Filling has reduced. Right atrium filling has reduced. Right atrium stretch receptors are not getting stretched. They're not getting any message, right? So what is going to happen? Because of the Bainbridge reflex, you're going to have a decrease in the heart rate because there's no need to increase it. That's what the reflex does. So heart rate has reduced from two different routes and asystole can occur. Now you will tell me, ma'am, what about the carotid baroreceptor? Carotid baroreceptors are also there, right? Their job is to sense the fall in the BP. They should sense the fall in the BP and they should increase the heart rate. You will tell me that, right? This is unopposed parasympathetic activity which has occurred over here, right? Now what will happen if my level goes up to T1? Okay, so if I have blocked all the fibers all the way up to T1, so even if my carotid sinus is working, it is sensing, it is giving the message to the medulla, but the outflow of the medulla is coming from where? The efferents of the medulla to the heart are from where? From T1 to T4 fibers, right? T1 to T4 fibers are only paralyzed. Then how will the efferents go to the heart to cope up with the fall in the BP? Now, we have also seen rare events like cardiac arrest occurring, okay, under spinal. So who are these patients who are prone for a cardiac arrest under spinal anesthesia? So they're usually young patients, okay, and they're healthy patients and they're conscious patients who can have a sudden cardiac arrest, okay. Now, we'll understand that sudden cardiac arrest a little ahead. Now we'll just understand hypovolemia, okay. So if there is a patient who is hypovolemic and you don't correct the hypovolemia and you still go ahead with spinal, okay, the patient can have a circulatory collapse. Okay, he might have he will develop bradycardia also, he will develop hypotension also, and then he will have a circulatory collapse. So always ensure that the patient is hypovolemic. You have to correct that hypovolemia before you give spinal. All right. So when hypovolemia occurs and you give, suppose there's a patient who's hypovolemic. Okay, so he's already hypovolemic. You give spinal without correcting the hypovolemia. So what has that caused? There is a two methods by which hypotension is occurring: spinal induced hypotension and already hypovolemic hypotension. So now what is happening? There is decrease in the venous return, right? And then left ventricular end systolic volume is less. So basically, in the end, what happens? The mechanoreceptors, if you remember when I told you about the basal-Jarisch reflex, right? So basal-Jarisch reflex is activated by what? Mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors located in the left ventricular wall. Now, mechanoreceptors in the left ventricular wall are sensing that there is very less filling which is occurring. Okay, so what will happen? Basal-Jarisch reflex will get activated in these hypovolemic patients who have been given spinal. What is basal-Jarisch reflex? How is it going to respond? There will be bradycardia, there will be further hypotension, and there will be coronary vasodilation. So already hypotension because of spinal, hypotension because of decreased this hypovolemia. Now basal-Jarisch reflex is also causing hypotension. This hypotension cannot cope up with the help of increase in the heart rate. Why? Because basal-Jarisch is also causing bradycardia. Okay, so can you understand what can happen if you give spinal to a patient who is volume depleted? So always do volume correction before giving spinal. What happens about oxygen consumption under spinal anesthesia? So under spinal anesthesia, the basal metabolic rate will be reduced. Okay, whatever portion of the body has been blocked below, the BMR of that area will be less. Okay, plus the muscles are also relaxed. So overall, the oxygen consumption is reduced. All right. Remember that under spinal, the oxygen consumption in the body is reduced in the blocked area. Okay. Next, what happens in the autonomic nervous system? Now, this is very important. Autonomic nervous system, the indirect effects. So this all we have understood is indirect effects of spinal, right? Because direct was what? Motor block, sensory block, right? That is what we wanted. These are the indirect now, which we really don't want, but we have to deal with them. So now for autonomic nervous system, so you must have seen this image previously. I did not save it as a screen share. So in this, if you can see, this is from Miller's. Okay, so there is going to be there is some sympathetic outflow and parasympathetic outflow which is occurring to different organs, and the sympathetic outflow is going to be blocked. Okay, under spinal. So how does that happen? We'll understand and what is the effect of the sympathetic and parasympathetic on the different body systems. Okay, first we need to understand that, and then we can understand the applied of the spinal. Okay. So you know that the sympathetic fibers that are leaving, okay, they're going to be arranged in the there's a ganglia's paravertebral gang chain of sympathetic chain, right? Paravertebral sympathetic chain. So that paravertebral sympathetic chain has got 22 paired ganglia. That we have 22 paired paravertebral ganglia. Okay, this we have 22 paired, out of which how many? We have 3 paired cervical, we have around 11 thoracic, and then we have got 4 lumbar, and we have 4 sacral. So if you remember, this is the spinal cord, suppose, and this is the brain. So the ganglia were like this, if you remember, right? They were paired paravertebral ganglia. Okay. If you understand what work they do, then you will understand that when they are blocked, what is going to happen. Okay. Now, what we need to know, this side I will draw all the sympathetic supply and the fibers. Okay. So cervical, we had 3 ganglia, right? So cervical, we have the superior cervical ganglion, middle cervical ganglia, and then you have the inferior cervical ganglia. Okay. So the sympathetic, now this red color which I'm showing now is all sympathetic, then parasympathetic will take in a different color. So it is superior cervical ganglia supplying the eye. All right. It's also supplying the salivary glands. Okay. And it is supplying the blood vessels. Which blood vessels it is going to supply? It's going to supply all the blood vessels of the head and the neck. Okay. So cervical, wherever the cervical fibers are going, no, and over there, whichever blood vessels are there along the cervical fiber distribution, all those blood vessels. Okay. So what is going to be the response in the eye? because the sympathetic, I'll put a sympathetic. All right. So you're going to have pupillary dilation. This is the response. Salivary, what is going to happen because of sympathetic? You're going to have decreased secretions. Okay. If you remember the flight, fright, and flight response. So what is in that? Sympathetic, it's a sympathetic response, right? So in that, what happens? The pupils will dilate. There will be dryness in the mouth, right? Overall secretions are decreased. Lacrimation also will be decreased. Okay. What will happen? Blood vessels will vasoconstrict. This is the response that is seen over here. Next, now we'll come to the thoracic. So we have the, so if 11 thoracic are there, right? So I'll just put this T1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So this T1 to T5, which is there, T1, T2, T3, T4. This T1 to T3, T4, T5 sympathetic fibers, which are coming out from T1 to T5, where they go to some plexus. Okay. So now we'll understand. So this all supply to, firstly, the cardiac plexus. It also supplies to the pulmonary plexus. And then you have the esophageal plexus. Okay. Okay. So it's going to supply cardiac plexus, pulmonary plexus, and esophageal plexus. Means sympathetic supply to the heart, to the lungs. All right. And to the esophagus. So cardiac plexus is basically coming from T1 to T5. Pulmonary is coming from T2 to T5. Okay. And this is esophageal supplies from T4 to T6. So these fibers, they are forming this plexus. Now, what is going to be the effect on the heart? Obviously, cardiac plexus is, so therefore it's going to increase the heart rate, sympathetic response. Pulmonary, what is going to be the response? Bronchodilation. So it's going to cause increase in the heart rate, and bronchodilation is the sympathetic response. Next, what about the sweat glands supply? Who is going to supply the sweat glands? Okay, of the upper limb. So the upper limbs and the trunk. So upper limb, I'll just put it as UL, and the trunk. What's going to happen over here? It's going to decrease sweating. Correct? There's going to be decreased sweating. Now, what is going to be the supply of this upper limbs and the trunk? So the upper limb ka supply is going to be from T2 to T8. All right. And the trunk supply is going to be from T4 to T12. So you might not remember in proper, just keep a range plus minus in your mind when you work practically. Okay. Then we have the, now next, we have T6, T7, T8, T9. Okay. So now we'll understand what is happening over here. So we have the greater splanchnic nerve. So this is going to go to what? The greater splanchnic nerve. Sympathetic fibers arising from T6 to T9 will go to the greater splanchnic nerve. Greater splanchnic nerve will go to the celiac ganglion. Okay. From celiac ganglion, who is it going to supply? Okay, so the supply is going to be to the stomach, to the liver, to the spleen, the small intestine, okay, and to the pancreas and adrenal. Just understand this, because the physiology of autonomic nervous system is also asked. This is useful. Okay, what is going to be the sympathetic response over here? It's going to cause decrease in the peristalsis. Okay, you know in fight and fright, right? So there'll be decrease in the peristalsis, if you can just remember that, and there'll be decrease in the GI secretions, because as we know, that all the secretions are decreased in the sympathetic response. Additionally, sympathetic response, the peristalsis is also reduced, right? Next, where we have supply of T10, T11. Okay, so T10, T11, and then we have the T12. So now what's going to happen? We have the lesser splanchnic. Now, since we have greater splanchnic, we also have lesser splanchnic. So lesser splanchnic nerve is T10 to T11 supply, as I've shown, and it goes to the superior mesenteric ganglion. Superior mesenteric ganglion goes and supplies whom? The large intestine. Okay. And again, large intestine, what will happen? Same thing, decrease in the peristalsis. Okay. GI secretions, not in the large intestine. Large intestine's job is absorption, right? So large intestine, the peristalsis will slow down. That is the effect of sympathetic response. Then we have T12, and then we have here, you will have L1, L2. Now we have come to the lumbar. Okay. So lumbar splanchnic nerve, it's going to be L1 and L2. Okay. This lumbar is going to go where? to the inferior mesenteric ganglion, and inferior mesenteric ganglion is supplying to whom? Kidney, ureter, bladder. Okay. So, and the genitals. So now what is going to be the response of this? What is going to be the effect? It's going to cause bladder relaxation, internal sphincter contraction, okay, and urinary retention. Okay, external sphincter, remember that external sphincter is under voluntary control. So have you heard anybody like, sympathetic response? If you remember that in sympathetic fight and fright, fright and flight, in that there's urinary retention, right? So that is what you can remember over here. Okay. So now we have understood what is happening in the sympathetic, right? Now we have to understand parasympathetic, which is on this opposite side. So just remember what is important over here, that you will see that there is decreased secretions in general. There is vasoconstriction of all the blood vessels. Wherever the blood vessels are supplied, all of this is supplied blood vessels, right, of the body. So the sympathetic fibers, when they are activated, sympathetic fibers are activated, there will be decreased secretion, there will be vasoconstriction, there will be increase in the heart rate, there will be bronchodilation, right? There will be decrease in the sweating, there is decrease in the peristalsis, decrease in the GI secretion, again decreased peristalsis of the large intestine. Here there is going to be urinary retention. Okay, so this is what we see in sympathetic response. What happens in the parasympathetic supply? So I told you sympathetic, where does the sympathetic outflow come from? Thoracolumbar, right? T1 to L. L3, L4 also comes in this. So it's like plus minus over here. So thoracolumbar is the sympathetic supply. All right. Parasympathetic supply is coming from where? So parasympathetic supply is craniosacral, right? Correct. So first we have the cranial nerve 3. Okay. So third cranial nerve will go to the eye and it's going to cause meiosis. The response is going to be meiosis, pupillary constriction, right? Then you have got what? Cranial nerve number 7, which is the facial nerve, right? What is it going to cause? Lacrimal, it's going to act on the lacrimal gland, right? And what is it going to cause? Increase in the secretion. Okay, opposite. Increase secretion, your decrease secretion. All right. So lacrimal and salivary. So basically the glands. Okay. Salivary gland will be through cranial nerve number glossopharyngeal. Okay. So lacrimal gland is cranial nerve number 7, salivary gland is cranial nerve number 9, and they will cause increase in the secretion. On the eye, the effect is meiosis. Okay. Then next, you're going to have the cranial nerve number 10, very important for us as anesthetists, which is the vagus. So vagus will act on the heart. What will it cause? Decrease in the heart rate. All right. Next, it's going to act on the lungs, bronchoconstriction. Next, it's going to be the small intestine, stomach. So here it's going to cause increase in the peristalsis. This diagram is very important, okay? Next, the sacral. So sacral outflow is also going to be parasympathetic, right? So you have got S2 to S4. S2 to S4 is going to be supplying who? The kidney, ureter, bladder, colon, rectum, genitals. So what's going to happen over here? There is going to be, I'll put it over here. So the bladder is going to now voiding, right? So bladder contracts, internal sphincter relaxes, and voiding of bladder will occur. Okay. Additionally, what will happen in the colon? There will be increase in the peristalsis. Not only colon, even for the ureter, okay? This is what's going to be seen. So now we'll understand. Just like a quick recap. Okay. So what we have understood physiologically, what is happening. All right. Physiologically, what is happening in the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic outflow is thoracolumbar. Parasympathetic outflow is craniosacral. Okay. So sympathetic supply, now we just have the cervical, some nerve fibers are there, which are forming the superior, middle and inferior cervical ganglion. Okay. The 3 cervical ganglion, which are paired. So they are going to be supplying to the eye salivary. This we have understood. Just quick understanding for us as anesthetists is what is the sympathetic response happening? All the secretions will be less. Okay, there will be vasoconstriction of the blood vessels. There will be increase in the heart rate. There will be bronchodilation. There will be decrease in the sweating. Sweating again comes under secretions, right? So overall lacrimation, salivation, sweating, all of that is decreased. GI secretions decreased. Okay, urinary again considered as like something that is leaving the body, right? Nothing can, no fluids are able to leave the body. Remember that. So here urinary retention. Okay, peristalsis slow down because now all the sympathetic fibers, what is that fight and flight response? Everything is focused towards flight, towards running, right? So the internal organs activity is suppressed, it's reduced because all the energy is going towards the muscles. Just remember that as a simple understanding. So peristalsis also is slowing down. GI activity, motility is all slow in sympathetic. Okay. Parasympathetic, what you need to remember is that all opposite is happening and craniosacral is the supply. So cranial supply is where up to the stomach. Okay, up to the stomach, and you can also include the small intestine. Okay, so that is going to be the cranial supply. Sacral supply is going from where? From the colon onwards down and all the genitourinary parts. Okay, so now here what's going to happen? All the opposite things. So there is going to be increase in the secretions. Over here, remember one, you remember all the sympathetic, all the opposite will be the parasympathetic response. Simple. Now, what is happening under spinal? We need to know that. So if spinal anesthesia is high, so if I have blocked fibers over here, I have blocked the cardiac plexus, I have blocked the cardio accelerator fibers. Okay, what will happen because I've blocked that? The heart rate cannot increase, right? So this is already blocked, cut. What else is happening? Am I blocking the vagus with my spinal? No, vagus is still dominant and acting. So what will happen because vagus is dominant and acting? Heart decrease in the heart rate. So parasympathetic is dominant, sympathetic is getting blocked. So there will be decrease in the heart rate if the block is high, T1 to T5. Okay. Bronchial effect. Now what will happen if I have a high block? Again, your pulmonary plexus supply to the lung from where T2 to T5. If I land up getting a T2 T5 level somewhere in the middle over there, means what? The bronchial smooth muscles will have what? The bronchodilatory property is lost. The sympathetic fibers are blocked. Bronchodilation is not happening. What is happening? Bronchoconstriction might happen. If you get such a high level, bronchoconstriction might happen, all thanks to what? Dominance of vagus, cranial nerve number 10. Okay. Next, what also happens? GI. Now, GI, what will happen? Because sympathetic block, everything is blocked. So, what will happen? GI secretions will now, this all is blocked in GI. So, what you will see that over here, there's increase in the GI peristalsis because all thanks to the vagus nerve, because vagus nerve is now dominant. Peristalsis will increase. Remember, increase motility of the, increased gastric emptying, increased GI motility, increased peristalsis in the small intestine, large intestine, everywhere. Okay, there is increase in the peristalsis which is occurring. Why now? Because of the increased peristalsis, if your patient under spinal, you have taken with inadequate NBM, because of the increased peristalsis, hyperperistalsis, patient might have regurgitation and aspiration. He might regurgitate whatever is in his stomach. All right. So you understand that if a high spinal occurs, then the patient might actually have regurgitation, vomiting, which might be actually attributed not to hypotension, but to the parasympathetic response. Patient's BP is normal, yet the patient is feeling retching, vomiting, discomfort in stomach because of this, because of parasympathetic response. Okay. And because sphincters are relaxed, internal sphincter relaxed, remember here, all the sphincters get relaxed. Here the sphincters close. Here the sphincters are open. Okay, so all the sphincters are open everywhere. So it facilitates the reverse movement of all the gastric contents. Okay. Then you will tell me, ma'am, but paralytic ileus happens. Paralytic ileus means what? There's paralysis of the intestine. There is decreased movement and decreased peristalsis. But here I'm telling you peristalsis is increasing. So why am I telling you that? Because paralytic ileus is a problem and a complication of major abdominal surgery. So when you take incision on the abdomen and you do some abdominal surgery, that handling of the bowel, that handling is causing paralytic ileus, not your spinal. So if you ever tell that a complication of spinal is paralytic ileus, you are absolutely wrong. The complication of spinal is not paralytic ileus, it is hyperperistalsis. Paralytic ileus is a problem of a surgical related problem. Okay, not an anesthetic related problem. Okay, next, if the patient has high block, okay, so what's going to happen? There's going to be paralysis of abdominal muscles, paralysis of thoracic muscles, right? So what is this going to cause? There's going to be decrease in the intra-abdominal pressure. There will be decrease in the intrathoracic pressure also. All right, and as the pressures are less, and then there will be pooling of the blood. So there'll be pooling of the blood into the different this thing in the splanchnic bed. Just remember that.